Hey, what's up, everyone? David Powers here, talking to you about the best way to taper from benzodiazepine. Now, most people have this method of drop a dose and then wait to balance out, wait for the symptoms to kind of ease up, and then they drop another amount, and they just repeat this until they're off. And I see a lot of this, and I just think it's us doing ourselves a little bit of a disservice. All right. So say you're on Valium. Say you're on 10 milligrams of Valium and you're tapering, and you say, I want to taper 1 milligram every 2 weeks until I'm off. So you taper 1 milligram. You just drop 1 milligram from 10 to 9, and then you hold for a couple weeks. Well, what happens is you have this tidal wave of symptom flare, right? Because 1 milligram is, well, some of the psychiatrists would maybe tell you otherwise. 1 milligram is actually a big drop. So you have a lot of symptoms that flare up. If we're saying, okay, what's your symptoms on a 1 to 10? And you go, okay, prior to tapering, I'm a 6. Okay, you drop 1 milligram, your symptoms flare up 10 to 11, right? And they stay that way for maybe a week, maybe two. And then they come back down to 6, 7, or 8. And then what we do is a lot of times is we just hold because, the symptom flare was so bad, the increase in symptom severity was so much that it's almost like we need a break. And we say, okay, I dropped a milligram, I'm going to wait. And sometimes we do this for a month or two, and it's just bad practice. It's understandable because, it's a tormenting process, and you just want to take a break. But the longer you're on the drug, the worse it is for you in terms of healing and in your neurochemistry. I mean, the idea is to come off this drug as fast as possible, but without going too fast, of course, because there is a danger if you go too fast, cold turkey, or you get pulled off in 2 or 3 weeks. It's not good. There's not good outcomes. There may even be suggestions that this makes it harder to heal. So you want to go slow, but you don't want to go too slow. If you're coming down 10 milligrams of Valium, it shouldn't take you 2, 3, 4 years to come off something like that. So the best way to do it, in my opinion, and I think Dr. Heather Ashton, and others that have kind of become an authority on this topic, would suggest a slow daily tapering. So if you're going to come down again from 10 milligrams of Valium to 9 milligrams, don't just drop 1 whole milligram and then wait for the symptoms to go away. Instead, try to come down in maybe little small increments over the period of 10 days to 14 days. Or maybe even a week. I mean, everybody's different. But the idea is if you shave just enough, just a tiny piece every day, the blood level concentrations never really jump, right? So your symptoms never super flare, but they will get hotter. They will get harder. It's sort of like turning up the temperature slowly in a pot of water versus, putting a pot of water in the stove and just turning it on high. So if you can create a slow taper, I'm talking you're using a razor and you're just shaving off the most tiny, minute little parts of that pill. Almost to the point you're going, what am I doing? This is nothing. But over the course of 7 to 14 days, you now have a half a milligram or a whole milligram, speaking in terms of Valium. This gets a little bit more difficult when we're talking about Ativan, Klonopin, things that are more concentrated. The dosages are sort of bigger in a smaller package, right? So they're a little bit harder to achieve that slow taper. And in that case, the best thing you can do is to get on the lowest possible dose. So with Ativan, I believe this lowest dose is a 0.5. And that's a lot. A 0.5 is, what is that, about 4 milligrams of Valium? So that's tough. If you had a 4 milligram tablet, then okay, you got to break it in half. Now you got two milligram tablets. And you can break that in half. Now you got 4 1 milligram tablets. And if you tried to take one of those little quarters and then break those down further into over 10 days of, shaving them, as I've suggested here, you can see where it gets really hard to be precise. And you're bound to have flux in the blood levels, which means your symptoms are going to spike. That's why a lot of people suggest you switch to a longer acting benzo like Valium, and you go to a low dosage. So if you could get to Valium, say you're on 1 milligram of Ativan, switch over to 8 milligrams of Valium, and get your prescription written in 2 milligram tablets. You can split those tablets in half, and now you've got a big 1 milligram tablet that you can sort of shave down into 10 little tiny parts, and you're trimming down 1/10 of a milligram, and you could do that every day or every 2 days until you're off. So again, going slow, shaving is going to be much better than dropping a milligram, wait for the hell to pass over you, drop another milligram, wait for the hell. It's too hard. Another thing you can do is use a spare bottle to collect all your smaller pieces. I did this for a couple reasons, because sometimes when you get so low on a dosage, you might be able to use those older pieces because, they might be the perfect size for just what you need for that day, and you can start working with those. But also, you can track your progress, right? So when I was coming off Valium, I had a bottle of that I collected all these pieces in, and it literally went from like a rainbow. It went from blue to green to orange to white, because the blues were the 10s and the greens were the 5s. I believe that's what it was. Or no, it was the blues were the 10s, and then I went to a generic green, and then I believe the 5s were orange, and then the 2s were white. And so as you've seen these pieces sort of broken up in this, it just created this sort of rainbow effect of pills. But it gave me something to see as far as my progression. I could say, look at all that. Look at all that I cut out right there. Look, it's charting my progress, and that's really important, because this is a long journey. It's tumultuous, it's traumatic. It's your instincts are telling you to ruminate and be fearful that you're not going to do it, that you're never going to recover, that you're not strong enough. And it's like we need something to mark our progress, to remind us that, hey, we are winning. We're doing this. We're stronger than we think, and we are making progress. Because otherwise you'll get burned out on the entire thing. You're gonna want to up your dose, or just take an antidepressant, or who knows, So again, the best way to taper: go slow, and slow and steady every day. I was pretty much my entire taper, I was always tapering every day. I mean, even if it was just the most minute little shavings, but I kept it moving. And I'm working on something here, guys, that I think will be really valuable to you. I learned about this through one of my clients that I was coaching for benzo withdrawal. And there is an organization out there, I think multiple ones as I'm looking into this, that can adjust your medication. They actually serve as so like my client was on Ativan, right? And she was able to get her pills made into 0.25s. So instead of 0.5, which is typically the lowest dose, she had them made into 0.25s, and they were capsules with, powder. They were basically powder. So that gives you something. That's really something, because then you got a bigger pill and more to work with, and you can achieve more steady taper if you're on Ativan or Klonopin, and you don't have the luxury of being on Valium, or your psychiatrist just won't prescribe you Valium, and you don't have the luxury of having that smaller dose in a bigger pill that makes it easier to sort of eye and weigh and measure and achieve those slow, steady tapers. So that's going to be something I'm looking into. I'm going to try to do a video on this. I'm going to call these places, try to get some more information. Heads up, the place is called The Art of Medicine. So if you're listening to this, do a Google search on The Art of Medicine. I think it was theartofmedicine.com. And yeah, check them out. I think this could be a real game changer for people whose psychiatrists won't put them on a different benzo like Valium. That'll be easier to taper. Again, you can go through Art of Medicine, or maybe something similar in your area. I think your psychiatrist has to, there's a process that to communicate with them and approve of it, and then they'll send it right in the mail to you at whatever dose. My client got a 0.25. I actually think a 0.1 on Ativan would have been even better in pill form. All right, guys, so that's been just some words on the best way to taper benzo. If you like this information, please click that like button or subscribe, and help me share this content with others that you feel might benefit from it. Keep your head up. You will heal. There is life after benzo. I promise.